So that's how my business career started. The real influence on me was my dad. My dad was a World War II Marine sergeant. For those of you who know Depression babies and know something a little bit about World War II, my dad enlisted right when the war started and headed out to the islands and stayed and fought in the islands throughout the end of the war. In fact, he was training for the invasion of Japan when the war ended. So, ergo, I have a dad. The interesting thing about the Marines is my dad couldn't have been a better Marine. He enlisted, he volunteered, he thought like a Marine, fought like a Marine, and he enlisted, and he still does values in me. And the number one value really was there's a right way to do it, and the right way always matters. Now, that was a little lost on me when I was a kid, because getting the job done and trying to go off and play or whatever I wanted to do made more sense a lot of times, but my dad was always there to show me the right way to do it. And as I grew older, I started to realize the wisdom in that. So my dad was a little extreme. Great guy. You won't know a lot of people like him, but he was so dedicated to doing things right. He never swore, he never smoked, and he never drank. Now picture that. That's a guy who went off in World War II as a Marine, came back, became a finished carpenter in the States. And when I tell people this, they're telling me, well, you don't know your dad. It's true. Never swore, never smoked, never drank. He was just an amazing guy. Had his flat top till he died. What he did for me was really, encourage me to do things right, whether that was baseball, which was my sport. I was also a swimmer. I did a little golf. He was really a pretty good golfer, so he taught me how to play in the backyard. We didn't have the money to go out and play on a regular course. But everything was, quality. Do it right. Learn how to do it right. And if you're trying to do it right, that's fine, whether you succeed or not. So one of the things that I realize now is I always wanted to be like my dad. So when I got into high school and was still working full-time while I was in high school, I didn't have time for sports because I really couldn't afford it. If I was going to have a car and a date, I'd have to work for it. So I did. So I'd play in the summers and I'd play some semi-pro ball and things like that. But ultimately, college was coming up. And one of the few things that my dad absolutely impressed on me was learn all these skills. She showed me how to do all the work on his jobs as a carpenter. He was real proud of them. But he kept telling me all the time, you got to go to college. We would be the first in the family to go, me and my brother. My brother's 3 months older. That's another story I'll tell you in a future video. But he always told me I had to go to school. It wasn't because we had the money to go to school. That wasn't part of the equation. It was just that I needed to go to college. And again, be the first Bielats to actually go to college. So I lined up a Marine NROTC scholarship. Can you imagine? It made total sense to me. So at the time, they said, your MOS will be a Harrier pilot. Well, that can't get any cooler. Then I thought, where's the coolest place to go to college? Well, how about University of Colorado Boulder? And I can ski and fly a fighter and be a Marine. Life couldn't have gotten any better. Well, I'm off at Great Lakes Naval Base one time, and the chiefs start challenging me on things. Hey, you took this test, and we really think you ought to be in intelligence. Well, I don't know how that sounds to you if you don't know much about what happens in the military. But at the time, all I wanted to do was fly. I wanted to fly and ski. I thought this was the best setup ever. So I kept pressing them for, am I going to get my MOS or not? Am I going to be able to fly these Harriers, which they're actually fantastic planes. They're called the Harrier, the jump jets. So they're close support for all the Marines. It's one of the few planes in the world that can do what it does. So I was all excited, and they made it pretty clear that it was a chance that I would get to be a Harrier pilot. Came back, asked my dad. I said, hey, the chiefs are telling me this. He says, well, guess they're not going to let you fly. That's about it. I took that as gospel. My dad said it. So I called up the chief and said, can I withdraw from the program? He said, yeah, but you shouldn't. And I left it at that. We'll talk more about that later. They didn't give up on me. I gave up on them for a while. So went off to junior college, found out I couldn't get into college to the University of Illinois, which was really my goal, because my GPA, which I didn't know what it was when I graduated, that wasn't really part of the equation, wasn't high enough to jump into University of Illinois, which made sense. So then I went down to a junior college, a local junior college, and decided that I should be able to get in if I get good grades there. Well, I kept going down every quarter after quarter, and the dean at the College of Engineering, in fact, mechanical engineering at U of I, kept telling me, no, we don't take people from junior colleges because they don't do well when they get here. I kept asking him, well, if I get A's and I do well, will you let me in? He was shining me on, telling me no, not completely discouraging me. So I kept going, got all my basics done, worked again full time through all of my junior college and factories, and in the summers I'd get jobs doing landscaping and working at pools as a lifeguard, whatever it took to keep working. Finally, I was out of classes at my junior college and went back down, drove 2.5 hours, saw the dean, showed him my final grades and everything, and he said, well, I'll put you in, but who knows? So I went around and applied to all the other schools that had a decent engineering school. This was, at the time, MIT and University of Illinois had the best mechanical engineering schools in the nation. And lo and behold, I got my acceptance letter, so off I went. That was the start of my mechanical engineering degree. So did that, continued to work. I don't know, to this day, don't understand why. I didn't understand that there were loans available or grants available. We were certainly low income, so we would have gotten that. That wasn't even something I thought about. So I paid my way through all of the University of Illinois, and my dad gave me $500 on my last semester, which I thought was fantastic because I didn't have to work that semester, and that ended it. After that semester, I was going into my master's. I thought I really wanted to go up and work on the space station, and that was a good time. And I was working for Professor Cryer, who was a fantastic professor, and he was the guy if you wanted to get in space. And I got a call from one of my fraternity brothers who said, this Fortune 100 company, PepsiCo Frito-Lay, will pay you right now, and they want you. I didn't understand it. Anyhow, long story short, made the call, and I realized they did want to pay me, literally, to come out. So that was my first job out of school, was a Fortune 100 company in a fast-track leadership program, which was really, really helpful. But then I got a call from the military. They weren't done with me. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a whole bunch of things. I could make a whole show on that. But ultimately, they convinced me that it would be a good idea for me to get involved in this program they had. And the program essentially was a covert program where I was going to go in and potentially look for issues with our chemical weapons or our nuclear weapons and make sure that we weren't compromised. But it was an on-call program, so what I would do is get into an industry, which just so happened to have a nuclear plant up the road. My degree was more than adequate to get me in there, so they planted me up in a nuclear plant, which was legitimate work. I focused on running commercial nuclear power plants and ended up literally helping almost every commercial nuclear power plant in the country with root cause analysis and human performance improvement and literal general management. So I went out and did that. At the same time, I had this program, which was something I couldn't share with anybody, but went off and did a few of these missions. It was fantastic. So it was one of the greatest things I've ever done. If we get to talk in person, I'll explain more because it's now declassified, so I can talk about it at this point. But at any rate, off we went. Started working with the nuclear power plants. Finished my mission. That was a short-term mission. It was only a 2-year program that I could be in. Spent a few more years in nuclear power, and then realized that I really needed to be back more entrepreneurial. I wanted to get into industries that, if I helped them significantly, we and the community made more money, the constituents, and we'll talk about that in the future. But ultimately, went into steel at that point. Cruised up the ranks pretty quickly in that. It was really exciting. I loved steel, giant machinery, great stuff, great for the country, amazing products, technical, fun, really good stuff. So ended up at second command there, was the director of manufacturing, and ended up as the chief operating officer, and was being toyed with as the CEO at a very young age. That was super humbling. I was really proud of it. But this is where Andrew came from, if you will. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to see how many people I could help Didn't realize this at the time, so this isn't something I was sharing with my wife at the time or my friends. I just realized that I would be limited if all I was doing was helping one company. So I went to my CEO, who was a great guy, ex-Army Ranger, and told him, Joe, I got to go. He says, well, what are you going to do? I said, the same thing I'm doing, but I want to do it for more people. I want to do it wherever I'm needed, and if people don't like me, they can get rid of me. But if they like me, I've got something to offer. So fair enough, he says. Off I went. Didn't have any clients. Spent about a month creating a company called Pilot Advisors. And about a week after I actually formed the company, I got a call from the CEO, and he said, well, what are you charging? And next thing you know, he was my first client. So that was the start of Pilot Advisors. So that's a little introduction of me. I'm Andrew Bielat. I'm the founder and managing partner at Pilot Advisors. When I founded Pilot Advisors, that's literally what our mission was, to find the best practices and for me to find the best practitioners to help clients implement the best practices to become the best possible company they can become. That's how it all started. So literally, my career has been through the Pentagon, nuclear power, heavy manufacturing, tech, chemical weapons. It all comes down to the same thing: is how do people do the best they can with the assets they've got for their customers in their communities.